The reading for our focus today comes from the Gospel of Matthew, the 5th chapter. Jesus said, "You have heard that it was said, 'You shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy.' But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, so that you may be children of your Father in heaven. For he makes the sun rise on the evil and on the good, and sends rain on the righteous and on the unrighteous. For if you love those who love you, what reward do you have? Do not even the tax collectors do the same? And if you greet only your brothers and sisters, what more are you doing than others? Do not even the Gentiles do the same? Be perfect, therefore, as your heavenly Father is perfect." At Bethlehem, we emphasize the power of story or narrative in our life. The stories that we tell ourselves, they shape the way, they influence the way that we see ourselves, others, and the world. And there is nothing more powerful than the story of God's activity resonating with our lives. When we share these stories, they resonate with others. And God's love, mercy, grace, and compassion become real and experienced with those who hear these stories. Bethlehem has committed to telling these stories of residents by empowering speakers to share their personal stories with hundreds of people once a month for a year. And today, we are blessed to hear Heather Kraft share her story of residence as she has experienced the presence of God in the people she meets through her job and volunteer work. This is her story.
I wanted to give you a little background about myself and my faith. Over the years, my faith has changed, and for me, it has grown deeper. Today, my faith resonates through my life experiences, and in particular, my volunteer experiences. When I moved to St. Cloud 15 years ago, I went from working full-time as a recreation therapist to staying home with my then 1.5-year-old daughter and son on the way, and that has been a blessing. As my kids grew, I began to volunteer in the community, teaching therapeutic horseback riding, visiting members of our Bethlehem faith community who needed a friend or a visitor in their home or in the hospital, and finally volunteering as a companion with hospice patients, including sitting with them as they take their last breath. These experiences resonate with me and have made me who I am today, both personally and spiritually. I've always been passionate about working with people, specifically people facing challenges. In 1997, or since 1997, I have had the privilege to work with people of all ages who live with a variety of physical, cognitive, social, and mental health needs. And I wanted to share a few of those experiences that have resonated with me over the years and influenced my faith. So let me start off with being a therapeutic riding instructor. As a trained instructor, I taught people who were either born with or acquired challenges or disabilities how to ride a horse. I took a high-risk population combined with a high-risk animal and I put them together. Not stressful at all, right? What happened in those moments was amazing. For example, I talked with one rider and his mom about what he needed from our program, and she shared how her teenage son, his life was significantly altered in a bad car accident. He had a traumatic brain injury that affected his ability to walk. He was in a wheelchair, had cognitive impairments, difficulty forming words, and used a letterboard to assist with talking. It's easy to get caught up in how awful the experience was for this family and how his life was changed forever, and it was. However, there was another side to this story. He was alive and he still had his life ahead of him. So what did therapeutic riding do? I transferred him from his wheelchair, helped him onto the therapy horse, and his face absolutely lit up. He was taller than everyone with a completely different perspective on his world. The natural motion of the horse's movement allowed his body to move as if he were walking on the ground again. Working with him to say the words "walk on" and "whoa" to start and stop his horse, along with teaching him to use his body to direct his horse, was empowering. This riding experience gave him a power and control like he never had since his accident. It gave him hope. And I saw God in that simple improvements that he had and the strength he gained through therapeutic riding. How rewarding it was to see him find his inner strength. My oldest rider was 100 years old. Her family asked if I could help make her final wish come true. She had dementia, and it was at a point in her life where she did not recognize family. She had a lot of confusion and believed she was a child on her family's farm. And her family embraced this moment, and they simply wanted her to get on a horse one more time. So with all the safety measures in place, we got her on her horse, and the look on her face was priceless. She took hold of those reins and said, "Giddy up," and took off. And she reminisced about life on the farm, knew exactly what to do on her horse, and remembered how to ride. And it was in that moment, witnessing the family's tears, their joy, their amazement, all wrapped into one, that I saw God. Looking back on these moments with riders, each experience resonated with me. Despite the challenges they faced as riders, they were able to find hope, strength, and joy. And I don't believe that would have been possible had God not been present with them in those moments. I know for a fact that God worked through me as their instructor and my volunteers. I believe God was present in every situation. The second part of my story involves carrying ministries here at Bethlehem. I went through training with Pastor Janine in 2015, and as a volunteer, I spent time with church members in need of companionship, prayer, communion, or just a peaceful presence. Prior to COVID, I had the opportunity to visit members in the hospital who were recovering from illnesses, surgeries, along with those who were hospitalized for mental health needs. And my role was to provide a supportive presence. Being present with members in the moment, simply sitting and listening, not providing a fix to the situation, was powerful to be a part of. The last part of my story centers around walking with people as they face death. Not an easy topic. This part of my story started when I was in college and continued with my volunteering with hospice. So I'll share with you a story about my grandma's passing. I came home from college to visit my grandma in the hospital. My mom and I were both in the room with her, and my grandma said, "Who is that?" referring to someone outside her room. My grandma left to see who it was, and I found out later the person my grandma was referring to was the hospital chaplain. Fitting for what I'm about to tell you. I stayed with my grandma and we talked, and then my grandma sat up, put her hand to her chest, had a heart attack, and died right in front of me. I heard her take her last breath. In that moment, I was in shock. But in that same moment, I looked across the bed, and in what was an empty chair a few moments ago, I saw a vision of my grandma with the biggest smile on her face, and she was looking right at me. Talk about resonance. That changed the way I view death. It's hard to put into words, but I met God in that moment. So that leads me to the last part of my story. For the past 5 years, I have had the opportunity through hospice to walk with people and their loved ones as they face death. When people hear the word hospice, some think of a very hard and sad time, especially when it relates to a close family member or friend. And that is so true. However, volunteering with hospice has given me a different perspective. I have the privilege of being present during a person's final journey home. And I get to help patients and their loved ones find moments of joy on that journey. And I believe that is what is most important. It's a gift. So what is my role as a volunteer? I sit with patients and sing old hymns, When asked, I read from the Bible or a meaningful devotion. And there's some patients that don't have a connection to religion at all, and I am just a companion for that person. I've had patients who hunger for physical touch, as simple as just putting my hand on top of theirs. And then there's some people who don't want to be touched at all. And it's in those moments that I simply just sit there and I am present without saying a word. And that is powerful. I've been asked the question, how can you go into a room of a complete stranger who is dying and know what to say or do? And my response has been, I just meet them in the moment. So let me share a few examples. I recall a male patient that I used to visit, and he loved to go hunting and loved the outdoors. So when the weather would allow, I would bring him outside and we would talk about nature, and he would smile. Sometimes this would lead to a life story he shared with me about hunting with family and friends. Together we would look at family pictures from hunting trips, and they would spark conversations about memories of his life. Talking about these memories brought him joy. Another memory I have, it was with a patient who had dementia. I would sit with her and just let her talk. I would simply allow the conversation to be led by her. One day I recall her admitting to seeing things no one else could. To her, these visions brought her joy. I recall her asking, "Can you see that?" And I would respond, "No, but would you like to talk about what you're seeing?" And she would talk about seeing people in her life she knows who have passed on. She would laugh as she talked about seeing little children that were dressed up in their Sunday best that their parents would drop off in her room, and she was responsible for watching over them. Again, children I could not see, but I understood they brought joy and meaning to her in the moment. And that resonated with me. Each moment of hospice volunteering, I met patients where they were in life. I met people in moments of fear, not knowing what to expect when they died. Moments of joy for simply having company. Moments of sorrow and anger where more independence was taken and filled with dependence on others. I've shared my time with some wonderful people during hospice volunteering, and it really, truly has been an honor. Being present with patients in the moment when they take their last breaths of life on earth is powerful beyond words. There's a sense of sharing something deep and meaningful that takes place, even though I did not know the patient until I walked through that door. The moments I've shared with others while volunteering have expanded my capacity for empathy and the understanding that I have of their personal journeys and life experiences that they face daily. It's in those shared moments that everything else in the world is insignificant. It doesn't matter. And what remains is a communion together. I believe a spiritual connectedness. And it gives me the opportunity to move closer to God. I volunteer to experience and be a part of people's story. And in return, these experiences shape my life by the joy I find in connecting and being with other people. These opportunities have opened my eyes in a way that shows me how God works in the lives of people that I encounter as a volunteer and in life. And the result is opened my own heart. It's opened my mind and my soul to inviting God into my life experiences. I am who I am today because of the people that I have encountered in and out of volunteering. Meeting people where they are in life has been powerful for me. You see, life is a journey, and I believe God didn't intend for us to walk it alone. I believe He walks with us, equips us to build a community through relationships. And personally, those relationships have resonated with me and strengthened my faith. And I hope part of my story has resonated with you as well.
So after hearing our text and Heather's reflection on her story of residence, we have a couple of questions for you to go deeper into the story of your own faith. Reflection question number 1. Jesus taught us that to love God is to love your neighbor, which requires empathy. Is it easy or hard for you to be empathetic towards another? Why do you think that is? And question number 2, do you find it hard to acknowledge, accept, and talk about death with your loved ones? Why or why not?